Okay, so can somebody quickly tell us that what is the difference between a stock concept versus a flow concept?
So,
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
So, stock refers to assets or reserves at a particular point of time. It's like a screenshot at that particular point. And then flow refers to the ins and outs of the transactions in that particular period.
Okay.
So here, yeah.
Okay.
So here in balance sheet, asset means on that particular day. So it may be different the day after or the day before.
Okay.
But here in the profit loss statement for the year ended means it's for the entire period, the transactions of the entire accounting period.
Okay, fair enough. Any new point someone wants to add? Okay, I'll spend a little bit of time here to explain this in case it didn't get completely clear. So what he's mentioning is completely right. Yeah, Ronika, go ahead.
Yes, so what I was saying is that stock concept measures anything at a particular point of time, while a flow concept measures something over the period of time, like suppose a year or 2 years.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Shovik, any new point? Go ahead.
The units are different for stocks and flow. So for this flow is like per year or per term kind of. And
same point. I think Ronika, yeah, just now already mentioned that one is for period and one is for a point of time. Okay, let's get a little bit more detail into that. So Yasin, go ahead quickly.
Sir, the effect of flow concept will appear in the stock concept after that.
Yeah, you are right. But this is a little bit abstract for everybody to understand. So I'll use some explanation before that. You're right, exactly right what you're saying. Let me explain this a bit. Stock concept. I'll use a very lame example. So some people are giving some sophisticated example. I will use a lame example. This is not a mushroom, not a hammer of Thor. I try to draw a water tank. Okay, this is a very typical example that people give, economics people will get. Let's say this is a water tank with some water in it. Okay. Now let's say I ask a question. The question is, how much water is there in tank? So basically I am asking the accumulation of a variable. So the question is, how much water is there in the tank? Now this question, just think about it. Let's say you have two references that either you can ask a question at a point of time or for a period of time. Now, what do you think? With what reference can I answer this question? For a point of time or for a period of time?
Point of time.
point of time.
This cannot be answered for a period of time. For example, let's say I want to say how much water was there in the tank, let's say at 12 noon, or let's say 10 a.m., or let's say yesterday 5 p.m., or whatever. So this is, as somebody said, that this is like a screenshot, that at particular point of time, this is how things look. So an accumulation of a variable can always be represented only with a reference of point in time. That is what happens when we are mentioning balance sheet. Okay, here this BS stands for balance sheet, don't get other ideas. So in a balance sheet, we have primarily have two sections. In these sections, we will be talking about all the resources of a firm and all the obligations of a firm. The resources we call as assets and the obligations are called liabilities. Now what we are talking about here is that what asset, let's say I'm talking about Tata Motors. Let's say you want to respond to the fact that Tata Motors owns some land. So this question can only be answered with a reference point in time. So you can say that Tata Motors owned this much land on, let's say, 31st March 2016. When the business was closing, we had this much land. So before that, there could have been pluses and minuses of to the land. But after considering all the pluses and minuses, we have this much land left on this particular time. So in that sense, this is a particular snapshot at a particular point of time. Let's say I ask another question. The next question I ask is that how much water flown into the tank. So basically now I am talking about change in the variable. or delta of a variable. When I'm talking about change in a variable can always only be answered when you have a period as a reference. You can't talk about change with reference point of time. For example, let's say I said that how much water flown in at 12 p.m. Now you can't answer this. From what period to 12 p.m.? Now you need to have two reference points. So this is more like a movie. So it will look absurd to talk about that how long is your snapshot. There is no duration to snapshot. Duration is only to a movie. So similarly, we have a duration in mind that let's say you are talking about Tata Motors. How many trucks did you sell? How many motor vehicles did you sell during this period? During, let's say, last month, last quarter, last 6 months, or last year. You can't answer the question that how many trucks did you sell at the point of 31st March 2016. You need to have a starting reference point. Only then you can answer a question. So whenever we are talking about a change in a variable, this is what we mean by flow concept. And whenever we are talking about accumulation, we are talking about a stock concept. And stock concept can only be answered at a point of time. And flow concepts can only be answered with a period of time in reference. Now, when we talk about income statement or profit and loss statement, there we are talking about what was your revenue, what was your expenses. Now, the moment you're talking about revenues or expenses, in what period? So that period will be mentioned just below the income statement. That is why we see those words that as, at, and for the period of. So when we are talking about income statement, it refers to the entire period. It's like a movie that these stuff happened during the period. And when we are talking about balance sheet, this is what the company's position was on this particular point of time. Okay, so stock versus flow, clear to everybody? Any questions?
Yes.
Okay, let's get ahead. Now what we will do is, so you remember those four sections in which we said that we'll study this course. So first section was motivation. So motivation ends here. Enough of motivation. I even threatened you all will be going jail yesterday, right? So that is more than enough motivation already done. Now we'll be moving to a very crucial section, which is we will be talking about basic concepts. And once we are done talking about concepts, we will learn the process of preparing the statements. Now, these basic concepts will form an argument or logic for the process. So, for example, let's say I tell you when we are discussing about the process, I tell you that put this item there, put that item there, and something here. Do something like this or something like that. It needs to follow certain basic concepts. So, first we will discuss the basic concepts. Okay. Now there is something that we will discuss, something that we will discuss even before that. So there is, in general, this list is not hard and fast, but in general you will see these terminologies, except for, let's say, this number 8, we will study all of them. Okay. But even before we look at all of these concepts one by one, we need a yardstick. We need a yardstick to measure that whether these concepts themselves makes any sense or not. Should they be there, or somebody was just feeling sadistic and they have created a rule and now we have no option but to follow them. So those yardsticks are these. Now what we are talking about here is that what should be desired quality of an information. So we are trying to give information. So financial statement is all about giving information. Now this information needs to fulfill certain qualities. And these qualities, most of them are very intuitive, straightforward, but still you need to understand them. You need to keep them in back of mind whenever some debate arises as to some concepts. Is it good? Is it not? Should we take it or should we not take it? Sometimes we will see that there is a fight between one or two desired qualities whenever we are talking about certain concepts. So when you're talking about information, needless to say that information needs to be relevant. For example, let's say I told you that, okay, statutorily, as Tata Motors, you need to give information. Only problem is that in information you are talking about in your annual report, you are talking about how good the CEO's daughter sings. Now that may be an information, but is it relevant? Is it relevant to all those stakeholders out there? So don't give crappy information, give relevant information. Very basic point and straightforward. Now, not only relevant, make sure that you give these informations in a timely manner. Now, what does timely manner mean? Timely manner means as frequent as possible. Now, how frequent is as frequent? This will depend upon country to country. For example, in some country, you will say that you will be asked to put the information at least annually. In some countries, you will see that they will ask you to give the information at least semi-annually. In some countries, you will see that do these information or filings quarterly. Some places might even ask it monthly. Now depends. So if you, for example, if you give a number, if you give relevant information in very good format, but you give it after 20 years, it might not be very much of use to me. So information needs to keep coming in a timely fashion. And why I mentioned all these options out here, because we don't know which country's company you will be dealing with later on. So in some country, the regulation might require you to give monthly filings, quarterly filings, semi-annual filings, or annual filings. Typically, I haven't seen any country which requires you to file the information for a longer period than annual. So annual will be bare minimum, but it can be more frequent than that. So be prepared for that. Now, the information needs to be relevant and timely. On top of that, it needs to be unambiguous. Now, what do I mean by unambiguous? This is where I was giving you the second caveat of dictionary. So you will keep on seeing that a lot of words will have very strange meanings when we are talking about them in accounting or financial statements. One such example is cash. Let's say I'm mentioning that, let's say Tata Motors has this much cash. Now, what do you think they would be talking about? Are they talking about hard cash, or hard cash plus bank balances, or hard cash plus bank balance, within bank balance only savings account, or hard cash plus savings account plus current account, or hard cash plus all the bank balances? What are they talking about? Typically, what, yeah, you all of you are correct. Typically, what they would be talking about is, when they are mentioning about the word cash, it includes cash, it includes any money in the bank, and also it includes something that is called equivalent. Equivalent means some of the assets which are not exactly cash, but they actually behave like cash. They are so liquid that whenever you are mentioning the word cash, primarily you are informing the ability to meet transactions. That's what you are informing. So when you are informing the ability to meet transaction, you can meet them using hard cash, using your bank balance, or using some of the very liquid assets. So I will not go into all those jargons here. I will not go much into detail of these right here, because this part will come much later once again in a little bit more detail. But you need to understand that here, by keeping the term having a very stringent meaning, they are trying to, or they are attempting to keep the ambiguity as low as possible. Now you need to keep a note here is that we can only attempt to reduce ambiguity. Even after our best efforts, some amount of ambiguity still might be there, but the effort should be ex ante, that try to reduce the ambiguity as low as possible. So information should be relevant, timely, and as far as possible, unambiguous. Now comes the next one. Next one is, I think the first part should be very self-explanatory, that when you are giving information, don't lie. That's what this correct means. For example, don't be this Ramalingam Raju, that you are telling to the users that we have cash, but there is no cash. You are saying that we have these many assets, there are no assets. So don't lie. That's a big no-no. I think that doesn't need any clarification. But the second part needs a little bit of clarification, that just stating the truth might not be sufficient. Now this might sound something strange, that I am telling the truth, what else you want me to do? Sometimes only truth might not be sufficient, the truth needs to be fair as well. Let me give you an example to explain this. Let's say you have a startup and you want some money, you approach a bank for a loan. The bank manager will ask plenty of questions, right? Let's say they are asking that where is the business located, who are your primary clients, and blah blah blah, what are assets you already own, and what are future prospects, what do you want to do, among other information. Let's say the bank manager also asked that what was the sales in last year, that how much sale you already have. Let's say you gave the information, the sales was of 5 crore rupees, and you are not lying. Only problem is here that you forgot to mention that after you did a sale of 5 crore rupees, there was a sales return to the amount of 3.5 crore rupees. Now tell me, if somebody asks you that what was the sale, if you mention 5 crore rupees and don't say anything else, are you not deceiving the person even though you are not lying? This is because in general, the sales returns are not this sizable. For you, it was so sizable that you should not, now I'll be introducing to more jargons, you should not be answering the gross sale figure, rather you should have told them net sales figure. So when you subtract returns from gross sale, it is called net sales. Now when the manager was asking that tell me your sales, let's say she did not specify that gross sale or net sales. You took the liberty and went ahead and gave them a correct information of gross sale. Now in this situation, even though the information was correct, it was not fair. So you should have given the information of net sales. Why? Because returns are very sizable for you. So that is what we are talking about, that give us information, but not only they need to be correct, they need to be fair as well. And there can be some situations where not all the correct numbers are fair. Only some of the correct numbers are fair. So give the fair one. Next one is once again very easy to understand, that give us in a precise manner. For example, don't give us paragraphs after paragraphs after paragraphs. Do you guys know the process of IPO? IPO पता है क्या होता है?
Yes.
Initial public
Yes.
Initial public offer, yeah.
What I'm talking
Yes.
about, IPO, initial public offering.
Public offer.
Yeah. Initial public offering is a process in which a private limited company tries to go public. And what they are trying to do is they are trying to offer the stake to general public. That now, let's say I along with 4 of you, let's say Ishan, Jayant and Jitendra and Jyotika, let's say all 5 of us opened a private limited. We were running it successfully for a few years. Now what we want is, we want to encash our efforts. So what we can do is, we can open our firm to public and say that now we are going for an IPO, and anybody who wants to pay certain money can take some of these shares that are up for grabs. So you can pick 1 or 2 or as many as you desire by paying the desired price. Now the moment you are going for an IPO, you need to give information to the general public. That document is called prospectus. Okay, so you will be filing some document with SEBI, and SEBI will put it in public domain. So what I want you to notice is that go back, and a small task once again, and download any prospectus for any company and notice its contents. You will see some pattern there. Okay, the pattern, it may be because of that, or it may not be because of that, but you may see this. So what I'm talking about here is that some of these documents will run into hundreds and hundreds of pages, 500-600 pages. Now you might see that why are they giving this much information? So the thing is that, let's say that 5 of us are operating a company, and the government regulation states, so you all know that statutory requirements. Let's say the statutory requirement says that give us all the information, and among other things, let us say, just for argument's sake, these are just for argument's sake. This is a fictitious example. Don't sue me that, okay, I looked at 3-4 prospectus and I did not find this. So let's say the government forces me to divulge if any legal case is happening on our firm. It may be crucial for all the prospective investors. Now the problem is that all 5 of us are thinking that now we have this very dangerous case going on us. But if we divulge this information to all the public, nobody will be interested in our company. So now we want some way out. So we hire some hi-fi investment banker. They in turn hire some hi-fi lawyers. Now what they do is that they prepare a document of 500-600 pages, and it's so dull and boring that by the time you move to third or fourth page, you are already fast asleep. And somewhere on page 497, they are giving, you know what, a very serious case is going on us, and we might lose everything that we have the next day. So the point we are talking about here is that, okay, timely, relevant, and correct, and true and fair is all okay, but you need to give an information that is precise, that is actionable, that the moment I see the information, I can make meaning out of it. So if you say, let's say, when you are giving annual report, you are doing all those things, but on page number 9, you are mentioning the sales figures, and page number 327, you are mentioning sales return. Now I'll be confused. Meanwhile, you are talking about this initiative and that initiative, and we are promoting that save electricity or blah, blah, blah. We planted 5 trees as well. So you are filling all the pages. So basically the point is that information, unless it is precise, it's of very little use. So now you would appreciate the value of those 2 pages that I sent you across, that look what strength accounting process is putting in our hands, that just by looking at 2 pages, you can get a lot of understanding for a business as big as Tata Motors. This is achievable only because these statements are very precise. They're summarized and they are presented in a manner which is very easy to understand. So all these classification or all these qualities, ideally we would want to aim at achieving all these qualities. You will see that sometimes we will need to sacrifice 1 or 2 to get a benefit in something else. Okay, now you will understand what I'm talking about here when we actually go ahead and discuss the basic concepts. Because these things are fairly straightforward, I don't think there will be any questions, but still let me ask for completeness sake. Any questions? Eerie silence means no. Okay, fine. I don't know what my voice volunteers are doing. Kahan hai Janta? What are their names? George, Harsh, Ishan Gautam, Gautam Kumar, Jayant, Jutika. All you sleepy guys there. Okay. So comfort is not for you. Say yes or no. Okay. Anyways, let's get started. Let's get started with discussing the basic concepts, and now we would want to put all of those qualities and see whether it makes sense to have these concepts or not. And in that manner, we would have also learned these concepts. The first one being very simple, straightforward, money measurement concept. Money measurement. Now, what does money measurement say is that we will record in financial statement only those aspects of the business which can be expressed in monetary terms. So converse would be that if something that cannot be expressed in monetary terms, we will not record that aspect of the business as far as financial statements are concerned. So is the concept clear? Concept number 1, what does it say? Money measurement. It says that in financial statements, we will restrict ourselves to only those information of the business or only those aspects of the business which can be expressed in monetary terms and nothing else. Now, I don't need to tell you, I'm sure that even a small discussion will bring about in this class. So tell me, use your common sense and find, let us discuss that what would be some of the pros and cons of this, having this basic concept. Are you getting something? Are you missing out something? Yeah.
So some intangible values might get missed out, like the value of a firm, which can't be quantified.
Okay, value of a firm. Okay, what do you mean by value of a firm?
As in, like, I'm not entirely sure, like we were discussing the other day, that the part of goodwill or something, like how valuable a firm is, like
okay,
not in
the day-to-day word goodwill. Okay, basically let's use the word reputation, because
okay, yes,
is I would want to say a quite abused word in accounting. Okay. So basically you are talking about via reputation, you are talking about that all the qualitative stuff.
So
That's what happens. Yeah.
a quantitative thing which is not often captured in a financial statement is, I'd like to explain this with an example. Suppose a new company discovers the, let's say, vaccine for COVID. All right. In the when the company is established by the end of the year, all right, we may see that the financial statement records all its sales and revenues. But the fact that COVID is a global pandemic and there's fear means that there's a considerable growth element in its revenues, which will not be reflected in the financial
Okay.
statement.
Okay. So bottom line of all this is any qualitative stuff will not get recorded. By qualitative, the name itself suggests that it is so qualitative that you cannot express it in monetary terms. So I would not want to give
growth
this
is
sorry.
So growth is a quantitative thing, sir.
Growth
Would
is
it
a
not be so?
no. Growth is not a quantitative thing. Growth is a qualitative thing which, if you estimate, you want to put a quantity into it. Okay. Can you talk about anything that will happen in future? Nothing. Everything, if you are talking about it, you are just making an estimate. Maybe your estimate is better than mine, but at the end of the day, yours is also an estimate and mine is also an estimate. Okay. Some people are putting things in comment. Just unmute and go ahead and speak up. Yeah.
So, sir, I was saying, please go on, Vignesh.
Yeah, so that's a quick question. So this money measurement, it's a basic concept under anything, or it's just like for finance terms? Your market is one.
Okay. So a question even before the basic concepts. What is he asking about? As that are these basic concepts under certain regulations or in general in finance? Okay. So these are, I think they are taken from something that are called IFRS. I'm not really sure that these are pointers mentioned in IFRS or not. You will see that most of these are common to any accounting. So these are general accounting concepts. Only thing is that this formalization of terminologies are given for a reference. For example, if you are following, so there is something called accounting standard. Accounting standard is rules and regulations of accounting. So rules and regulations of accounting can be under different accounting standards. For example, somebody is mentioning GAAP. Somebody is it can be US GAAP or some other GAAP. So US GAAP. Let's say Indian accounting standard, let's say IFRS. So we are not talking about any of these regulations per se here. Even though when you look at these regulations, most of these you will find there. What we are talking about is that in general, no matter what regulations you are following, you will have these basic concepts. So we are basically talking about general concepts, even though the list has been taken from one of these. But maybe this money measurement will appear in someone else at number 5 and with some other name, but the concept still applies. Maybe this entity concept is appearing in Indian accounting standard with some other name and at some other serial number, but the concept still applies. So all of these are applicable in general in accounting. So these are not specific for a regulation. Okay. In fact, you will see that nothing I talk about in this entire course, or rather 99.9% will be general concept. The idea being is that I don't know which country you will land up into. I don't know that even within this country, which country's form you will be dealing with. So all of the discussions, this is especially relevant for all of these BCom and CA guys there. That so far what you have done is you have studied everything from a perspective of Indian rules and regulations and maybe IFRS. Now I'm broadening it. Now there will be it's like one level above the rules and regulations, that conceptually what makes sense. So once you understand conceptually what makes sense, then you can go ahead and read the rules of the country and then implement things accordingly. So most of the time we will not be discussing about any rules and regulations anywhere. Fine. Okay, let's get ahead. So we were discussing about some of the pros and cons of the first basic concept, and this applies irrespective of what standard you are talking about, is money measurement. That we will be dealing only about measurable things. Measurable in what term? Measurable in monetary terms. So it will not be able to capture crucial and important variables like, let's say, work culture. Work culture is not there in either income statement or balance sheet or anywhere. Let's say employee morale, it's not there anywhere. But is it important? It may be one of the most important things. So the bottom line is that some things which may be very important, but still it may be missed out in financial statement simply because of this restriction. Now, if it is this bad restriction, there must be something even better, good coming out of it, right? Only that is why this is the first concept. So that is why we will also discuss some of the pros. Yeah, Bharat, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Loyalty of employees also will be missed out.
Loyalty of employees, work culture, ethics, level of ethics, morality of the management, efficiency of management, then all such sort of thing. Let's say locational advantage of the business, and all such sort of future prospects also. In fact, accounting is nothing about it, not at all about future. You will see then that in financial statement, we will all be dealing with past. We will not be dealing much about future. You may use the past to anticipate the future, but we will not straight away go ahead and anticipate the future, at least in financial statement. So futuristic anyway we are not talking about. Present and past we are talking about. But even present and past, a lot of issues might not be covered, simply because they could not be measured in monetary terms. Yeah. So all those people putting comments there, just raise hand and speak up. Yeah, Bharat is already done. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
In pros, we can write that it stops the management from overvaluing the financial statement by stating the qualitative measures.
Okay, so basically what he is saying is that discretion is reduced. That's exactly right. That even though we will see that a lot of discretion is still there, we will see that this would have been like positive infinity to negative infinity if you leave the qualitative aspects also to come in. Now, after we have done this restriction, you will see that the flexibility will still be there, but it will reduce drastically. Yeah, fair enough. Next point. Yeah, Vedika, go ahead.
So one of the pros is it's a common unit of measurement. So it's easier to compare over the years as well. Over the years, during the year. So it's easy to compare.
Easy to compare because it's common unit. You can compare, you can add, you can subtract. Easy to interpret, correct? Easy to interpret, easy to put meaning to it. So basically, just imagine that, let's say Tata Motors is talking about that we have these many square kilometers of land and we have these many numbers of vehicles and we have this much 5-6 machine and we have, let's say, 500 employees. Now, this wouldn't register to your brain too much. Vis-a-vis, if let's say Tata Motors says that we have 5 crore rupees of land, we have 5 lakh rupees of worth of vehicles, and we have, let's say, 1.5 lakh rupees of worth of machinery, and we are paying salary of this much amount to my employees. Now things make sense. Now you can compare that what was it last year. Dealing with square kilometer and kilograms and meters and minutes and things like that, it will become very difficult to find a trend. But the moment everything is in numbers, you can understand what is going on with the business. You can quickly get, okay, so to this division I spent this many crore rupees, in this division this many crore rupees, and this and so on and so forth. And what are they giving me in return? Now you can control your business much better. So these all benefits, these all very crucial benefits are only available to you once you restrict yourself only with monetary items. So you can compare yourself with past, you can compare yourself with your competitors. All these comparisons could not have been possible. For example, you can't compare, sorry guys. For example, you can't compare 5 trucks versus 2 scooters. But if you say trucks in these many rupees and scooters for these many rupees, now you can compare. Okay, so these all benefits make it worthwhile to restrict ourselves only to monetary items. The bottom line being that for the sake of comparability, additivity, and interpretation, and precision and verifiability, I wonder how nobody came up with verifiability, that now the numbers are verifiable. Or maybe people were thinking and somebody closed down all these raised hands. I don't know. Somehow today it's been happening in other sections that some mischievous guy was closing down all the raised hands. I don't know for what purpose. You're frustrated with all the resume submission, or what is the real reason. I don't know. So right now you are just preparing the resume, right? So you will spend, like, that is the main activity why you have joined IIM Lucknow. These things are just small, what you can say, side shows. The main show is resume preparation. So moment your resume is prepared, so you have achieved what you have come here for. Those guys who don't understand sarcasm, you need to do something with your life. Okay, anyway, so the information needs to be verifiable. Okay, verifiable means that we just now discussed that information needs to be correct as well as fair. Now, how do you find out whether the information is correct and fair or not? If everything is in monetary terms, it's very easy to verify. For example, you can look at the vouchers, or you can look at the sales receipt or purchase receipt, that okay, you are mentioning this lakhs worth rupees of machine. When did you purchase it? Okay, here is the voucher. Okay, so things are very easily verifiable when you're talking about monetary terms. Now, the most important part is that you would have already understood it, but still let me tell it for completeness purposes, that what does it mean for us? It means for us is that when we are studying financial statements, we might know a lot about the business, but we might not know everything that is worth knowing. So keep this in mind, that a lot of qualitative and very important aspect might still be missed out. So for that, you may need to refer to some other sources of information. So keep it in mind that financial statements do not contain qualitative aspects, or those aspects which could not be converted into monetary terms. Sometimes when a transaction happens, even qualitative things can get converted into monetary terms, but unless that thing happens, we don't know. Okay. Any questions up till here?
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. Now what we will do is we will go to the next one. Next one will be slightly tricky. Okay. That is called entity concept, number 2, or sometimes it is also called separate entity concept. Separate entity concept. Now, what are we talking about here? So I will come to this accounting concept. This is an accounting concept, but the same concept is also there even legally. So I will come to the legal one first, and then I will get back to accounting one. So legal concept, I had already given you a homework, that go and find out that what does the word limited represent at the end of the word. This much ABC Limited or ABC Private Limited. Did you guys figure it out? What does the limited word mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you tell us?
Yes, sir.
Sir, it is about the limited liability when an organization is registered as a private limited company or limited company, and it is treated as a separate entity from the promoters.
Okay, okay. Not just promoters, all the shareholders. Yeah, Him, you have something to add?
Yes, sir. So so one more aspect of the limited liability can be that like the owners may not be personally responsible in case for the company's debts or something. So yeah, that is another aspect of it. Responsibility.
Okay. Now, what responsibility are we talking about? So both of them are exactly correct. I will explain it a bit. So all of you would have already read it, but for sake of completeness and clarity, I'll repeat it. Somebody is asking me to scroll up. Okay, this is called, yeah, okay. What do you want to? These points are more for understanding. Don't bother. So it's not like an exam question is going to come that means list 5 pros and 16 cons of having this concept or that. It's more for your understanding. If you have understood it properly, you have got what I intended to tell. Okay, not a problem. So now we are discussing an entity concept. But before we go to the accounting entity concept, we are discussing a legal entity concept. Okay. Now, legally, I also told you to learn something about something that is called a corporate will. Okay. So, corporate will is that legally speaking, in eyes of the law, the firm is different and the owners are different. Let me create an example to explain this. Suppose my name is, let's say, Vijay Mallya, and I open a firm. Okay, the firm's name is, let's say, Kingfisher Airlines. Okay, now the Kingfisher Airline is a business wherein I, along with 4 other friends, let's say Surendra, Sunita, Vidushi, and let's say Vaishnavi, all of us come together and we open this firm. Now, how did we open this firm? We got it registered in the form of limited liability company. And what did we do is that now we become owner of this. So owners of the firm are called shareholders. So promoters are also shareholders and other shareholders are also shareholders. So when you say owners, it includes promoters as well as all the other shareholders. So let's say all five of us contributed 2 crore rupees each. So in total, we contributed 10 crore rupees to start the business. Now, once we started the business, let's say 10 crore rupees is already there. We think that this money is not enough. So we went ahead and approached the bank. Let's say we approached Bank of Baroda and we took a loan. We took a loan of 20 crore rupees. Now there are 30 crore rupees and with which we will start the business or we will operate the business. Let's say we started the business. Somehow the business started going into losses. And after, let's say 1 or 2 months, just for argument's sake, don't think कि पता नहीं ऐसा क्या किया होगा. Just for argument's sake, let us assume that within 2 months of this 30 crore rupees, let's say all the money is gone and only 12 crore rupees are left. Let's say the business did not do good. Now the time of payment to Bank of Baroda comes, then we raise our hands that we surrender. हमसे ना हो पाएगा. Now the moment we surrender, that thing is called declaring bankruptcy. Now, when we declare bankruptcy of Kingfisher Airline, the law will say that only Kingfisher Airline, the business, is going bankrupt. So what they will do is that they will liquidate all the assets and they will recover this 12 crore rupees and then they will give it to all the outsiders. So here in this case, because it's a simplistic example, only one outsider is there. So Bank of Baroda, which needed to recover 20 crore rupees, could recover 12 crore rupees. Okay, so they had given us 20, but by selling everything that Kingfisher Airline had, they could recover 12 crore rupees. Now, how about this 8 crore rupees remain? The limited liability feature means that now Bank of Baroda cannot catch hold of me and my 4 of my other friends to recover the money. Why? Because our liability was limited. Limited to what extent? Limited to the extent of this 10 crore rupees. That is lost. So this is the payoff of the bank. What is our payoff? Our payoff is that we gave 10 crore rupees and did not get anything because of that. So we lose entire 10 crore rupees. But the protection is, that's it. We are not going to lose anything further. Bank cannot attach our personal property and say that 8 crore is still underpaid. Now you sell your personal property and give me the money. That is what is brought about because of this wheel, this curtain between the limited liability company and the owners. Now, obvious question then, why everybody is behind Mallya, right? Everybody is behind Mallya because this is allowed only when there is no fraud. In case of a fraud, so suddenly you take this 20 crore rupees and suddenly you go on holidaying or you keep on printing those Kingfisher calendars or whatnot and purchase Tipu Sultan ka sword, then the government will catch you. Then the law agencies will catch you. They will say that it is not a loss because of the due course of business. It is a misappropriation of fund. Then it is called, yeah, somebody has rightly mentioned, this process is called that the court will lift this wheel. They will say that now for us, there is no distinction between owners and the firm. Why? Because a fraud has happened. So you cannot take undue advantage of this clause of limited liability. What does limited liability means? That if in due course of the business, let's say business makes a losses, in that situation, owners will not be touched. They will remain aloof. But if this provision is misused, that you take a loan and withdraw all the money and go on a holiday in Hawaii, then the court or the law authorities will catch you. Okay, so in general, in eyes of the law, there is always a difference between the firm and the owners as far as legally things are concerned. Now I'll complete the argument and then I'll refer to all the questions. Now this protection would not have been allowed if the five of us had decided to open a firm, but if it was not a company, neither a public company nor a private company. If suppose it was simply a partnership firm, Kingfisher Airlines partnership, let's say if it was just a partnership firm, then in that situation, there would have been no difference between us and the firm. And even our personal properties would have been sold by Bank of Baroda and their obligation would have been met. So legally speaking, if a firm is a company, then the law thinks that company is separate entity and owners are separate entity. Owners are shareholders. But if it is a private firm, if it is a sole proprietor firm or if it is a partnership, then even legally there is no distinction. So you are the company and you are the owner. So owner and business are the same thing.
So what about limited liability partnership, LLP?
Limited liability partnership is somewhat you have got a protection of a limited liability. So wherever the word limited is there in your name, that means now you enjoy this protection. So what it means is that I did not want to confuse the people, because already they would be confused between sole proprietorship versus partnership versus a company. So sole proprietorship and company, the distinction is that companies get the protection of the usage of word limited. So what Rishabh is mentioning is that even some partnership can get this protection by fulfilling certain criteria. So if you fulfill this criteria, no matter what the criteria are, if you are eligible to use the word limited in your name, now your liabilities are limited. So if business makes losses, your personal properties will not be attached. But if you don't have this protection, and if business takes a loan and the business does losses, even your personal property can be attached. Okay, yeah, now questions. Shobhik, go ahead.
Sir, how this law draws a fine line, they have misused shareholders or their capital or not? I mean, how they draw this fine line?
So there, as you said, there is a fine line, and that is the reason why these court cases run into years and years, because court is trying to find out that did the asset deplete simply because business was not good, or was there any misappropriation? So there is a fine line. It's for the court to decide. Okay. So unfortunately for you and fortunately for me, we cannot discuss all the legal aspects here. But just let's assume that court can decide. Court is wise enough to decide. Yeah.
So can you repeat partnership versus sole proprietorship?
No. What I'm saying is that sole proprietorship means one owner, and partnership means more than one owner, but not a company. Okay. But legally speaking, the implication of both of these is same, that either partners take a loan or the firm takes a loan. If firm defaults, partner's personal property will be attached and vice versa. And similarly for sole proprietorship. So between sole proprietorship and partnership, only difference is sole proprietorship, let's say I alone decide to open a kirana store. And partnership means, let's say I and let's say Tamishka decide to open a firm. So as long as we have not registered it as a limited liability firm, we continue to be responsible for all the loans that or all the obligations of the business. So if business defaults, our personal properties will be attached. Yeah. Asmati, go ahead.
So what all does it take to be registered as a limited liability?
Some regulations. So different countries will have their own registration processes. For example, in India, there is somebody called Registrar of Companies. They have a lengthy rules, regulations called company law. So you look at all these rules and regulations and get yourself registered. Yeah. Tanya, go ahead.
Sir, bank has provided the loan of 20 crores and in turn it is getting 12 crores. So what about the 8 crores? So bank doesn't have any legal right to...
So she is asking about in case of a company, let's say it was a genuine loss of business and if it is a company. So bank gave them 20 and got back only 12. So what about the 8 crores loss? That's all. That's what it is. It's a loss. It's not even an NPA. It's a write-off. It's a loss. Gone. So you live sad ever after. So not all the propositions in the business bring profit to you. So this is one.
So bank just has to accept that.
Yes.
The loss.
Bank just has to accept. So
it don't have any legal right to claim or something.
Legal right means what? The entity from which had borrowed, that entity is gone. It's like कि मुर्दे से आप थोड़ी ना पैसे निकलवा पाओगे. That entity has died. Kingfisher Airline legally was a different entity. Now the Kingfisher Airline has died. They gave everything to you, whatever they had, and they have done. They died. So you suffer a lot.
Beverage is like Kingfisher Beverage is still going on, right?
Sorry, come again.
Kingfisher Beverage is still going on, no?
What is going on? I didn't understand.
Kingfisher Beverage.
Kingfisher Beverage is going on. अरे इसमें सेंटी होने की बात नहीं है यार. I'm just trying to prepare an illustration. Okay, I'm not talking about this is exactly what happened with the Kingfisher. Okay, so this is just a fictitious example. The names are used for the purpose so that you can understand that one level of protection is available, but if you do a fraud, then that protection is not available. Okay, so when the law will decide, then maybe they will attach all the properties which Maल्या has wherever, maybe Kingfisher Beverages or United Breweries or whatever. I think it is called United Breweries, not Kingfisher Beverages or whatever it is. I don't know. So the bottom line is that as long as it is not established in court of law that there was a fraud and the owner is personally liable, their assets will not be touched. That is what the status is as of today. Yeah. Suman, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, am I audible? Yeah, sir. In such case, will the owner be allowed to restart any business in the future at any point in time?
In which case?
In such case, like in a fraud case, like say for example, if you take Vijay Mallya's case, so he fled the country, and later if he come back to the country, will he be allowed to start any new business? Or so if he starts a new business and makes profit?
Understood your question. In general, the rule is, irrespective of Mallya's case, in general, the rule is innocent until proven guilty. So even though you and let's say Arnab Goswami on TV debate may say whatever, but as far as the law is concerned, innocent until proven guilty. So maybe he is guilty of not returning, but still, as long as the court is deciding, if the court case is not finished, he might not be guilty of misappropriating funds. So I don't know whether court case has already ended or not. I'm not following the court case. Yeah, Vaishak, go ahead. So answer to short answer to your question is, of course, as long as you are not guilty, you can do whatever you want. After you are caught guilty, maybe you will go to jail. You are not out to start a business, and when you come out, it's free. You can do whatever you want.
But if a company goes bankrupt, does it affect the credibility of whoever the promoter was?
Yes, definitely.
So in that case, bank may not.
Yeah. Credibility is always like a public trial happens and credibility is all gone. Yeah, that's always there. Yeah,
So my question was, if the limited companies have that protection, why not everyone goes for that limited option? Why people still opt for partnership or something?
This is one of the very interesting questions you could have asked, that if this protection is available, everybody should be opening a firm which is a company, right? But you don't see that. Some people are running a Kirana store in their own name. And not just Kirana store, even big businesses might not be a limited liability company. The reason behind that is that this is not a free lunch. These guys are sitting there, and it's not just capital requirement. There are plenty of rules and regulations that you will be subject to. For example, in yesterday's class, we discussed that how something becomes a statutory requirement. Let's say I want to sell momos in some market of Delhi. If I open this venture as a company, then every few duration, maybe I'm hiring a chartered accountant, then I have to get my books audited, then I have to file my returns with registrar of companies, and so on and so forth. The moment I am taking this protection, there are plenty of rules and regulations which I am subjecting myself to. Some person is missing me a lot. What's the problem? Let's switch it off. Okay. So what I was talking about here is that it might not be worthwhile. That maybe your business is small. That's why you would see typically the small businesses, you don't see them registering as a company. Why? Because the size does not permit them to follow all the rules and regulations and legislature of a company law. So that is the trade-off, that in one hand you are getting the benefit, but of course the moment you are getting a protection, they will expect you to keep everybody informed that what are you doing. But on the flip side, if you do this, then if you don't do this, then you are subject yourself to unlimited liability. Means if the business goes bust, then there is no limit to the downside. And that's the trade-off. Yeah, more questions? Okay, so once again, thanks for the voice response. Yeah, Vignesh, go ahead. You are saying something.
So can one owner form a LLC?
One
owner, one person form a LLC.
Limited liability company? No.
It has to be multiple.
So you didn't do your homework.
I saw now, but I just want
to find out that what is needed to start a private limited. What is this private limited, and what are the situations when it can become a public limited? So it would have told you that how many people are needed to start a private limited and how many people are needed to start a public limited. But to precise, one person cannot. More details, Google.
Yeah.
Now comes, so far I have only told you that legally what is the status. So legally what is separate entity concept I have told you, but the entity concept we are talking about is an accounting concept, and there is a difference. The difference is when we are talking about legally, then law thinks that if you are a company, then company is different and owners are different. The business is different and owner are different. But if you are a sole proprietorship, both of them are same. Owners are same and business are same. This is the status legally. But as far as accounting is concerned, there is no distinction. That no matter who you are a sole proprietorship, you are a partnership, or you are a company or whatever, we will always make a distinction that business is a separate entity and owners are separate entity. That is what separate entity or simply entity concept means. That when we are doing the recording, we will not mix up the transactions, personal transactions of owner with that of the business. We will keep them separated. An obvious intuition you can get that why we would want to do that, so that both of them do not get mixed up. Why? Because we want to see reports based on which we can take certain decisions about the business, right? That is a possibility only when you record the transaction of the business separate and transaction of the owner separate. Let me give you an example that what happens because of this. For example, let's say you are the business called Kingfisher Airlines and you took some money. You took 10 crores rupees from owners and you took 20 crore rupees from Bank of Baroda loan. Now, as far as accounting is concerned, in both situations, the firm will acknowledge that I owe money to two different parties. They will acknowledge that my obligations or my liabilities, I'm using the word obligation in the beginning, then I will switch to liabilities, that my obligation is towards a party to the extent of 10 crore rupees that I need to give it to them, and to another party to extent of 20 crore rupees that I need to pay back to them as well. So basically you see here that both of these are mentioned as obligation. Be it a sole proprietorship firm, be it a company, or be it whatever. In either case, we will mention that the obligation, in obligation side, we will mention that we have taken money from the owners, and there is a specific name to that. Whenever the firm acknowledges in accounting that they have taken money from the owners, it is called capital. Now notice here that this capital is different from our day-to-day usage of the word capital. When we say कि यार business में कितना capital लगा है, primarily you are talking about wherever the money came from. You are not only bothered about owner or non-owner. But when you see this word in accounting, it only means that whatever money is invested, how much came from the owners. So now you see that how ambiguity is being aimed to be reduced, that it has a very stringent meaning. If you took money from owners, that will be called capital. So now you all can refer to your income statement and balance sheet of Tata Motors, which is where here. And look at the first line. Because Tata Motors is a company, then the capital is added by one more terminology, share capital, because this capital is given by shareholders. So share capital means that Tata Motors owners, which are the shareholders, have given 679 crore rupees to Tata Motors, and they are recording this in the obligation side. These all are obligations of Tata Motors. So when Tata Motor is mentioning all different obligations, they are mentioning obligations towards the owners, and within that obligation, the obligation, because the owner have given money to the business in the past, is called capital, or in case of a company, it's called share capital. Is it clear? Any questions?
So you just said past contribution is represented as capital.
Yeah.
So is there any way to measure present contribution? Is there a separate term for that?
Okay. If you are asking this question, maybe you did not understand this. As at, where is that? I don't know what happened. As at. Basically, what we are mentioning is that this point or before, that up till this point, they had given this much money. So I don't know what you call past or what you call present. So it depends that what point of time you are looking at this statement. When they are mentioning that on the evening when the business was closing on 31st March 2016, the owners of Tata Motors had given this much money to Tata Motors. Fine?
Understood, sir.
Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Now we'll take a pause here, and we will also see a little bit more of implication that why this one is needed. So for example, in case of a law, we saw that only in case of a company, these two are treated separately. But as far as accounting is concerned, we don't bother that you are sole proprietorship or whatnot. Argumentatively, let me tell you that it is because you want to find out that how good or bad the business is performing. Yeah, Gautam, thanks for reminding. Fortunately for you today, I am aware of that today. That time is up. So I'm just winding it up. What I'm saying is that in tomorrow's class, or not tomorrow, whenever the next class is, we will see that why this one is needed. So far I have just given you an example of what happens when you apply this. That like any other obligation, you are acknowledging that even to owners you owe something. But why was it needed? Why we could not have clubbed owner and business together? what problem does it bring? This part we will see in the next class. Okay, all good? Okay, so I'll stop here now. So formally the